Hey, what's up everybody? Hammerheart Metal Reviews here once again, doing another discography countdown of one of my favorite bands. Today we will be talking about Dio, one of my favorite vocalists of all time, especially in like classic heavy metal. I mean, I'm not going to give too much of a bio. Everyone knows who Dio is. Started out in a band called Elf, then got recruited to go join Rainbow with Ritchie Blackmore, and I mean, they put out 3 absolutely stellar albums, just classics of traditional heavy metal, hard rock, whatever genre you want to call it, just classic albums. Some of my favorites for sure, such as Rainbow Rising up there, absolutely gem of an album. Then he left Rainbow and went and joined Black Sabbath after Ozzy left. Put out a couple solid albums, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, absolutely awesome albums, kind of rejuvenated the band. Then he left Black Sabbath, went to form his own band, Dio, just titled after himself. Not really a solo band, it's still the Dio Band, but of course named after himself. It's synonymous with him and just everything that he brings to the table. He did eventually go back and rejoin Black Sabbath for one more album, Dehumanizer, kind of in the middle of his Dio solo career. And then also the last album he ever put out was the Heaven and Hell album, which was basically Black Sabbath, like Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Vinny Appice on drums, who's a longtime drummer from Dio Band and also Black Sabbath, and of course Ronnie James Dio himself. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be talking about his solo career albums. He's got 10 of them. I'm going to be ranking them from my least favorite down to my favorite. As much as I love Dio, his solo career has been kind of a mixed bag. There are a couple albums that I don't really like too much, but they're not terrible. Like, I don't want to crap on them too much. It's still fucking Dio, and the musicianship is still great. There's some absolutely classic gem albums in here that you have to listen to. Then there's some that if you don't really go back to it, I completely understand, because I don't go back to all of these albums a ton. But anyways, before I get too rambling here, let's just get right into this. Kick this list off with my least favorite Dio album. So coming in last, number 10 from 1996 is the album Angry Machines. This one, it's kind of got a similar feel to the album that came right before it, Strange Highways, which I'll talk about later. But it's just not as good as that album. Like, it's more of a modern sound coming out in the late 90s. Wasn't really the classic Dio sound anymore. It's almost mixing in like some groove metal and stuff like that. Like, it's okay. There's even some like industrial hints in there. But to me, this album just seems like it has a lack of direction. It's not really too focused. They're not really sure what they want to do with their sound at this point. The lineup on this one, they did have Vinny Appice on drums, of course Dio on vocals, Jeff Pilson on bass, who came from Dokken, and a guy named Tracy G on guitar, who was just on the Strange Highways album and the Angry Machines album. And yeah, it's just not really an album I ever go back to. I listened to it to make this ranking again, and my opinion hasn't changed from back in the day when I first heard this album a few times. It's just not one that I enjoy too much. Best song, I guess, like Don't Tell the Kids is okay, but honestly, to me, this album's like 5.5 out of 10. I just don't enjoy it. But let's get past this one, move into some better stuff. Coming in at number 9, vastly better album than Angry Machines. I'm going with his most recent album from 2004, Master of the Moon. This one even like borders on to like 7 out of 10. So we're getting into way better territory. Angry Machines is the only one that I like really don't like at all. This one still has some redeeming qualities. Maybe it's not one of my favorites, but I still enjoy it. This one's probably his doomiest album, like slower tempos, really bringing in the old school doom vibes. There's definitely like a lot of melodics going on underneath, just so like dark and doomy and melodic at the same time. My only knock on this album is that it tends to drag a little bit. Like with some of his other albums, even if there was a doomier, slower song, then he'd pick it up with a faster paced song. This album doesn't really have any of that. It's just all kind of slower paced, and it tends to drag. That's why I have to rank it a little bit lower on this list, because it's just not as standout. The lineup on this one, they had Simon Wright on drums, who's a drummer on a lot of his albums, Jeff Pilson on bass, again from Dokken, and Craig Goldie on guitar, who was actually on the Dream Evil album, which I'll talk about later, and on the Magica album, which I'll also talk about later. So this guitarist was on 3 Dio albums. Best songs on here, the title track, Master of the Moon, is pretty good. In Dreams is catchy. So all in all, yeah, easily putting this one at number 9 for me. It wasn't a hard choice, but it is still an enjoyable album. Like I said, I give this one bordering on 7 out of 10, maybe like 6.8, 6.9 out of 10. Now let's get into even better stuff. Coming in at number 8 from the year 2000, I'm going with Magica. So the lineup on this one, I did just mention Craig Goldie was on guitar. We had Jimmy Bain on bass, the return of the original bassist from the original lineup, and Simon Wright on drums. This one was Dio's first concept album, which is hard to believe, with all the swords and sorcery and everything that Dio's famous for, that this was his first full-out concept album. And this one was really a nice return to form. This is the album right after Angry Machines, and it's way better than that album. There are maybe a few filler songs and kind of some like narratives could kind of cut those down a little bit, but there's still definitely a lot of good tracks on here too. Fever Dreams is really good. As long as it's not about love is pretty solid. And Losing My Insanity has a really nice like folky riff in there. It's really fucking catchy. That's probably my favorite song on the album. It's just fucking awesome. This one I'd give like 7.3, 7.4 out of 10. Like still very enjoyable album. Not quite getting to the peaks of his awesome stuff yet, but still definitely enjoyable. Moving in right along, coming in at number 7, going all the way back to 1990 with Lock Up the Wolves. So this one, yeah, he had a whole new lineup after the first 4 albums. Pretty much everyone was gone. He had a guy, what was his name? Rowan Robertson on guitar. He's only like 18 or 19 years old. Very guitar virtuoso. Simon Wright on drums. This was his first album. Did end up playing drums with Dio on a lot of albums. And then I think a guy named, what was it? Toby Cook or something on bass. I might have that name wrong. I'm sorry. My notes are not very good. But yeah, anyways, this album is only ranked a little bit lower because it's more of like a blues rock feel than straight ahead heavy metal. Like I still like it. It's enjoyable. It's not exactly the sound I'm looking for when I listen to a Dio album, but I applaud him for going for something different. And this young guitarist really slays it on here. Brought a different element of this blues rock feel, and the solos are fucking amazing, especially for an 18-year-old. Once again, I do find there's a few filler songs on here, though the whole album's not killer, which is why I have to rank it a little bit lower. But this is a very unique album in Dio's catalog and definitely still deserves a listen. Favorite tracks on here, Born on the Sun, Between Two Hearts is great. My Eyes is probably my favorite on the album. So all in all, yeah, this one's like a 7.5 out of 10. Still very enjoyable. Just, yeah, can't put it higher than this because I like the other ones better. Coming up next at number 6, I'm going with the album right after that from 1993, Strange Highways. So lineup on this, you got Vinny Appice back on drums, Jeff Pilson on bass, and this was the first album with Tracy G on guitar. This album actually came out right after Dehumanizer when he had gone back to Black Sabbath. He went there for one album, came back and did another solo album, and you can totally tell because it's got kind of the same feel as Dehumanizer, that he kind of wanted to stick in that same style. This is probably the heaviest Dio album, which is saying something, but it's fucking good. Yeah, it's mixing like a lot of the heavy doom of Black Sabbath with maybe some more typical older metal, maybe like some groove metal in there too. You could kind of start feeling the hints of it in there. I personally like the older style of Dio's albums better than this one, but nonetheless, this is still an enjoyable heavy album for a more modern sound. Favorite songs on here, the opening track, Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost, fucking awesome. Title track, Strange Highways, is great. Give Her the Gun is really good. Dio sounds really menacing on this album, like very dark. It's one of his most evil performances, I think, but he fucking nails it, and it's solid, and that's why it's in at number 6. Now we're into the top 5, the really fucking good stuff. So let's see what I've got in what order. Coming in at number 5, I'm going with the third album from 1985, Sacred Heart. So this one, yeah, it's the same lineup as on the first 2 albums, which is Vinny Appice on drums, Vivian Campbell on guitar, who went on to be in like Def Leppard, Whitesnake, Jimmy Bain on bass, and of course, Dio on vocals. To me, this one is only coming in 5th because I feel like it was a little bit of a misstep after the masterpieces that the first two albums were. This one didn't quite live up to those albums. But that being said, it is still very enjoyable. Kind of went in a little bit more of a commercial direction. The production is not as great though, I find. And it's just not on par with the classics. But when I say it's a bit of a misstep, it doesn't mean that it's all bad. Like, there's still really killer songs on here, and it's still a pretty enjoyable album. Like, this is more like 7.8 out of 10. I wouldn't quite give it an 8 for the issues that I just talked about. But that being said, there's still great songs. The title track, Sacred Heart, absolutely awesome. Rock and Roll Children is a classic. Like the Beat of a Heart. All in all, still a really fucking solid album. That's what's in at number 5. Up next at number 4, this might be my one shocking entry on the list that I'm going with a more modern album this high, but I enjoy this one a lot, and I am of course talking about his second most recent album from 2002, Killing the Dragon. This one I'll give a solid 8 out of 10 to. When it came out, it really like blew me away. Even though it's the more modern sound, I really felt that it was a return to form after maybe a couple albums that weren't as good as past stuff. This one has Doug Aldrich on guitar, Simon Wright on bass, and Simon Wright on drums, and Jimmy Bain on bass. I don't even know what I'm talking about. This one, yeah, definitely more modern production, but it's a good mix of like straight ahead metal with hard rock. Maybe it's not quite on par with some of the classics, but it's pretty close. And it's very enjoyable. It just sounds like they're having fun again on this album. It's maybe more of a happy feel after some darker albums like Strange Highways, Anger Machines, and Magica. Then Killing a Dragon comes out and it's really kind of got a happy, bright feeling to it. But it sounds like they're having a lot of fun, and I like that when I listen to like some traditional classic heavy metal like this. I want to have a good time. It's not always about being doomy and dark. This kind of vibe really suits Dio albums well, and that's why I have this one ranked so high. People may disagree, but hey, this is my ranking. These are just my opinions. So my favorite tracks on here, the title track, Killing the Dragon, absolutely great way to start the album. Along Comes a Spider, it's great. Better in the Dark. Just all in all, very enjoyable album. That's why it's in at number 4 for me. Now that leaves 3 more albums. These ones are absolute classics, should be in any metalhead's collection, or at least listen to it. If you like heavy metal at all, you gotta listen to these next 3 albums. Coming in at number 3, I'm going with his second album, The Last in Line, from 1984. So I talked about the lineup earlier that they had for their first 3 albums, Vinny Appice on drums, Vivian Campbell on guitar, and Jimmy Bain on bass, and of course Dio on vocals. This one is very similar in style to the debut, which I haven't talked about yet, but yeah, just a solid piece of classic, like traditional heavy metal. Kind of start to see that maybe power metal was forming as a result of some Dio albums, and of course like Rainbow was the precursor to power metal as well. But really great songwriting on here. Solos are great. Thoroughly enjoyable album. I can't quite rank it as high as the debut because I just like that one more, but there are great fucking tracks on here. We Rock, absolutely awesome fast way to open the album. The title track, Last in Line, possibly my favorite song on the album. I Speed at Night, great fast song. One Night in the City, Egypt, The Chains Are On, great way to close the album. Like, all in all, this one's easily, like, I'll say 8.7 out of 10. It's that fucking good. Definitely deserves a high spot on your list. 2 albums left. What's going to be in what spot? Let's find out right now. Coming in at number 2, I'm going with the debut from 1983. So same lineup as what I just talked about on The Last in Line and on Sacred Heart. And this one, wow, just what an excellent debut. Absolutely amazing. Leaving Black Sabbath, starting this band, what do you expect? And he just knocks it out of the park. Like, this is a heavy metal classic. It's just a staple. It's like, Dio is one of the best vocalists of all time. He's got soaring, beautiful, powerful voice, and it's really on display on this album. One of his best vocal performances, for sure. The songs are so memorable. And yeah, like Vivian Campbell's solos are great. There's excellent, memorable riffs. There's not really any filler on this album. I think it's all killer. It's all great. All the musicians are great on here. And it's just awesome. Like, every metalhead needs to hear Holy Diver. Come on. Like, the debut album from 1983, absolute classic. You need to listen to this album. I'm sorry. I'm just getting so excited because this album is so good. But favorite tracks on here, of course, the title track, Holy Diver. Absolutely awesome. Caught in the Middle, Stand Up and Shout. Don't Talk to Strangers is probably my favorite song on the album. Rainbow in the Dark is catchy as hell. This one is easily a 9 out of 10 for me. Maybe it's not a 10 out of 10. That's for perfect stuff. I'd say this one's more like a 9.1, 9.2 out of 10. It's that goddamn good, and you definitely need to listen to it. But that's not even my #1 favorite Dio album. I still got one more. If you know Dio, you know which album I haven't talked about yet. Maybe it's a surprise having it at #1, but for me, it's my personal favorite. Coming in at #1 from 1987 is the album Dream Evil. This one is just awesome. After Sacred Heart, I said earlier I thought that album was a bit of a misstep. Dream Evil comes out and is just a beautiful return to form. The lineup changed slightly. He still had Vinny Appice on drums. I cannot talk. And Jimmy Bain on bass. But this was the first album that brought in Craig Goldie on guitar. And I find his riffing on this album just fucking awesome. It's a little bit heavier than Vivian Campbell's style of playing. But the songs on here are so fucking good. It's just so good. There's so many great tunes on this album. Just classic heavy metal. No weak moments at all. Every song is fucking awesome. The riffs and solos are so on point, and Dio's voice is just magical. It's like this is one of the most powerful his voices has ever sounded. So much emotion in these songs. It's just great. Favorite songs on here: Night People, the title track Dream Evil is great, Over Love, Faces in the Window, and my favorite Dio song of all time is All the Fools Sailed Away. Nice long epic, starts so beautifully and then gets heavier. It's just a fucking long epic, so goddamn good. If you've never heard that song, please do yourself a favor and go check it out. Heavy metal classic. Anyways, these are just my opinions as usual. Love to hear yours down below. What's your favorite Dio album? What's your least favorite? What did you think of this list? Anyways, until next time, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Hammerheart Metal Reviews out!